All right. Good morning, everybody. Good to see you all to our one-day workshop. And I'm not going to say a lot of things. Instead, I will hand over to Wolfgang because he has the honor of the first talk, which is titled Introduction. So please go ahead.
Okay. Let me share my screen. So at all of these workshops, I'm the one who, I don't know, traditionally always gives the first workshop, so the first talk. So for those of you who don't know who I should be, then I'm one of the 12 principal maintainers. And the idea of today is that we ran a hackathon last week between the principal developers and a couple of other people, where we program, we plan, we fix, we strategize about what we should do for the next year. What should really have happened is that we had a deal.II workshop like we had 2 years ago in Colorado. And it's a shame because these workshops are a lot of fun. I think we've always enjoyed them in person to bring 50 or 60 people into one place to see how everybody is using deal.II and help each other and teach and work together. So these workshops are oftentimes not talks all day long, but maybe a third of the time is dedicated to talks and the rest of the time is to work together. And when we couldn't have that last year, we decided that we should just have this public day like today, where we talk a little bit about what's new in deal.II. And we thought we'll do this again this year after the hackathon last week. So what we would like to do today is that we just want to talk a little bit about what's going on in deal.II, so that the bigger community has a little bit of an idea of what's happening in the development. For you to meet us, I think one of the things that's always very useful is to actually know who somebody is. A lot of you will probably know who I am from these video lectures, but this is your opportunity to get to meet all of the other principal developers, and, see who they are, what they do, how they sound. That they're also really nice people, actually, that are quite approachable, people who you can ask questions. And then, of course, for us to hear from you. So I hope that we get questions from you. What's new? What you would like to do and don't know how to do. So there will be time at the end of each one of these talks for us to give feedback. But the point is, we want to build personal connections between the developers and the community and us, right? So that's what we would like to do. And this first talk is often to give you a very, very brief overview of where deal.II is coming from, where it is going, what the current status. So let's say the state of the union. So very briefly, for those of you who have not seen these sort of talks before, the history of deal.II is that it's really just a garage project. It's a project from a relatively small number of people, myself, Ralph Hartmann, and Guido Kanschat in Heidelberg. We built this software for ourselves. Nothing was planned. We didn't think of this as a community software that would find users outside our lab. And in essence, we put it on the internet in 2000 because that's what you did at the time. People built websites. That was new. That was exciting. And so we built a website for deal.II because we thought it would be cool, not because we thought that this is a project that a lot of people should be using. And of course, the perspective that we have today is very different from this, right? It's not just a project for ourselves. It's a project for a vastly larger community, and we pay a lot of attention to making sure that this is a software project that's usable by a lot of different people, and that it is well documented, well tested, and so on and so forth. So I think we figured out a few things on the way, and the things that I would very briefly like to touch on is it's a vibrant project. A lot of things are happening. So I realized actually that there's a mistake on the slide. This is the 9th deal.II user and developer workshop this year. We've held them roughly every 2 years for the last 10 years. And then roughly every year for the last 3 or 4, there are a lot of people on the mailing list these days. So I looked it up yesterday, and we're up to almost 1,300 now. And there is a very large number of contributors. So if you look at how many people are listed on the website alone, it's almost 300. But there's many more that have, made, I don't know, 5-line changes. So the number of contributors, these 300, is probably an underestimate. These are people who have substantially contributed to the library over the last 20 years. And it's exciting to us that so many people, not just the principal developers, but so many others are contributing as well. I create this graph every year, mostly because I think it's just really cool to see how the number of lines of code has changed over years. So since the first commit in 1997, we are now up to more than 800,000 lines of code in the library proper. And then there's another 750,000 lines in the test suite. So you can see that, there is a very substantial amount of developing happening every year for more than 20 years now. And I think that's just fantastic. And in particular, if you look at the last, 3 or 4 years, I put this trend line in here. And this line corresponds to 50,000 lines, new lines of code per year in the library. And then there's approximately as much again in the test suite. So if you think about this, that's 100,000 lines of code per year between these two. That's approximately 300 lines of code every single day, Sundays included. So I think that's it's a sign that a lot of people are really doing a lot of really good work. And if you look at the release papers that we write with every release, you get to see how much new stuff actually happens in the library. So I think that's just fantastic. There's a steady stream of new major features. So the 9.2 release, we've got it almost ready. It should come out in, I don't know, sometime in the next week, when finally the mile-long checklist has finally been worked through. There is experimental support for simplex meshes in there. So even though we've for years been saying that we will never have triangles and tetrahedra, we actually might. So not everything works yet. We call it experimental, but a lot of things are already working. There's better particle support. There are some multi-grid improvements. There are more efficient point evaluations if you need to evaluate the solution at random places. And then there's 9 new tutorial programs, and I think that is a record for deal.II. So it's quite impressive. There are many more smaller changes, hundreds of them. And then if you wanted to read up on this, we will write a paper. We have almost written the paper that will come out, or that we'll put on archive in the next week, 2 or so. So you can read up on what's new. Here's a couple graphs that are copied from previous years that I haven't updated. This is the number of publications per year, clearly pointing in the right direction. This is the number of commits that we make every quarter, every 3 months. So that also is pointing in the right direction. And then if you count how many people have contributed for the 9.3 release, it's 65 at least. The release paper will probably have 16 authors. So the release paper is typically our way to have everybody who, for this release and or for a larger period of time, have consistently contributed to the library. So it's the people who have been with the project for a while and to continue to be with the project for a while. Those are the people who typically appear as authors. We will have probably 16 authors on this paper. I think that's a really nice indication of the size of the community. And this could be you next year or some years if you are interested in contributing to a fantastic open source project. That could be you. I already said this, about 50,000 lines per month. I need to hustle a little bit because Peter gave me only 10 minutes, so I'm going to skip a whole bunch of things. We've also learned a few social lessons, in particular about how you build a community. We have many more developers than we had maybe 5 years ago, for sure than 20 years ago. We also have more principal developers, and so one of the things that I think is worth pointing out, we've got 2 that we appointed in the last 2 years. That's Mark Feeling from Colorado State here, my university, since this year, and Peter Munch since last year, and you will hear from both of them over the course of the day. So there's now a total of 12 of these principal developers, along with these about 300 people who contributed, and that too could be you one day. So I'm not going to go through these many slides that I have here in the interest of time, but the point that I really want to make is that deal.II is a quite active project, and I think that is to many of us a great joy that this is not a project that was developed 20 years ago and maybe 10 years ago and then sort of went into hibernation. But there's a lot of really cool stuff happening every single day. The point of this particular half-day set of presentations that we have today is that we really want you to be part of this project as a user, as a contributor, as a potential principal developer, also as somebody who helps answers questions on the forum, for example. So there are many different ways how everyone can be engaged in this project, and I hope that you find yourself interested in that.